Ebusianfo masan so atena se aha eye Ghanatube so ensem de edoso nia ekoso ewo oman Ghana mu ene ka se ebeka ye mfiri hanum se adofo ensem a ekoso ebi ne yenkonyenkotie
because there will be no proxy voting in the NPP's presidential primary. But could that be the final decision? Let's find out right now. Now, here's the thing. If you were looking forward to vote by proxy in the NPP's presidential primary next year, it is not happening. Not the primary, of course, but the proxy vote. You recall a ban on that form of assisted voting earlier this year. Tonight, we know that the decision has been upheld despite petitions to get rid of it. NPP's Presidential Elections Committee rejected petitions from party students and party folk in the diaspora challenging the ban. Committee Chair Jose Wusu insists the restriction will remain in place to safeguard the credibility and smooth conduct of the polls. Let's take a listen.
The earlier published position or guideline on proxy voting. We've listened to all kinds of petitions. We've read the petitions presented by sections of the party, and after listening to all that, we came to a conclusion that for the sake of conducting an election that is incident-free and election that is respected, election which is accessible to all, a very credible elections, that provision or that ban should be maintained. We will still not have proxy voting in this 2026 presidential primaries. That position is maintained. Thank you very much for coming.
Let's have a quick chat on the back of this. NPP stalwart Dr. Arthur Kennedy joins us with his thoughts on this latest development as far as that process within the party is concerned. Doc, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. But we heard from the chairman of the committee. The committee's decision is that we'll uphold that ban on proxy voting because we want to avoid disputes and we do not want to tackle issues of logistical challenges. Your thoughts on that?
Well, good evening to your viewers and my condolences to those who died. I kind of partially agree with the committee based on the limited information that I have. I think that to call it proxy voting is a little bit of a misnomer. There are many different ways of voting. Maybe the more appropriate term might be advanced voting or mail voting. And I think that there were ways that this could have been done, but I do not accuse the committee of any ill motive. I think that Mr. Oseutu is a very thorough person. He does his homework, so I think that they had challenges that maybe they couldn't overcome. I think that if they work with the diaspora groups, there might be ways of overcoming these challenges. You know, in America, for example, whenever they have elections, all Americans living abroad still vote. You know, there are guidelines about when your ballot must get there, the state the ballot must be in. So I actually acknowledge that the committee has challenges, and unless you get consensus buy-in, it's difficult to operationalize a vote by diaspora groups. But it also begs the question, though, if not now, then when? When will MPP members in the diaspora be able to vote in an election? And it's since MPP normally leads Ghana, it kind of brings us echoes of ROPA that I think people pay lip service to the fact that people abroad must vote someday, but there is no commitment on the ground. So I am disappointed. I wish that the committee had worked harder with the diaspora groups to find ways to get them to vote. I don't think every diaspora group can vote, but some of them, like North America and in Europe and West Africa, which are very well organized, it should have been possible for them to vote.
So there are some members of the party in the diaspora, particularly in the US, who feel that this will disenfranchise them. How can the committee go around that?
Well, obviously, what most of us have been doing is that if you can afford it, you travel home to vote. I think the way to have done it would have been, say, since the US has a very good database of members, you could have sent everybody who is a known member and up to date a certified ballot with instructions that those ballots must be marked, put in an envelope and returned to a certain point, maybe 2 weeks before January 31st. If you did that, then the morning of January 31st, you could have opened all those envelopes in the presence of observers or witnesses or agents for each of the candidates. And then once it is done on video, those numbers could be tallied with all the others. So there were ways of getting it done, and it's been done repeatedly by others. So we could have done it too. That is not to say it wouldn't be challenging, but it could be done.
I see. So now the situation is that if you can't come home, you can't vote in the primary come 2026, the presidential primary come 2026. Again, I'll refer to an article that was written by the NPP USA chair, Obaya Amponsa Frimpong, when she says that, look, this decision should not even be taken by the presidential election primary. It should be taken as a collaborative decision between the National Executive Committee and the National Council. Can the NPP walk back on this decision as a result of that?
Well, you can walk back, but I think Obaya is kind of nitpicking a little bit, because those bodies she mentions have empowered the election committee to make such decisions. But I think that January 31st is still quite a bit of time away, so there might be time to re-engage, not even just for this election, but for future elections. I actually think that if you get knowledgeable people and people who are committed to carrying out this exercise, and for its value as an example to all of Ghana regarding ROPA, it can be done. So I don't think there ought to be confrontation, but there ought to be collaboration in looking for a path forward to see if it can be done now, and if not now, then when.
I see. Doc, I want us to look at the race itself and how it's shaping up. We know that in the beginning, it seemed a bit rough in terms of the conduct of the various camps that have come up as a result of the future election, right? But since then, it would appear we've seen some improvement also in how the campaign towards the election is going. Would you agree with me?
Well, I mean, it can be better, but actually, I personally, on principle, I just think the way this whole thing was done has been a discredit to the party. And I think that men like Mr. Oseusu and his committee, I think the structures are actually very reasonable, but the process ab initio appeared a little flawed. So it kind of puts them in a situation where they get blamed, I think, unnecessarily. So I think that whatever happens on January the 31st, the party will find out that it has a lot of work to do to woo back those who have, to quote Jà resigned in their hearts.
When you say that aspects of the process seemed flawed, what exactly are you referring to?
Well, what I'm referring to is that, you know, generally, after the kind of election that we went through, generally electing the party leaders should precede the presidential candidate. And I think I've had occasion to explain why. The reason being that, for one thing, the leadership of the party that is superintending this election itself lacks what I will call confidence in the grassroots. I think the grassroots have a lot of frustrations with the leaders. It doesn't mean it will be all of them. So I think the best way to clear the field will have been for the leaders to go and renew their mandate so that the masses on the ground could change those leaders they think didn't perform well or have lost their confidence, and they could reinforce the mandates of those they thought had done a good job. Then once you did that, you should turn to electing your presidential candidate. As things stand now, I think we're picking the candidate a bit too early, and we all live to see whether this is a good idea. I think, of course, we are all biased based on where we live and our experiences. That I think that to use the Black Stars analogy, I mean, if the national coach got up and named the squad we are taking to the World Cup right now, a lot of people will be unhappy. The reason they will be unhappy is that soccer depends on form, and politics is like soccer. You know, you look at current form, you look at current issues, you look at issues that have not surfaced themselves yet. I am very confident that by mid-2027 or 2028, the global political environment in Ghana would look very different. So it would be wise to have waited a little bit, in my humble opinion.
I see. We know that today the voter roll was distributed to the candidates and their representatives who are at that news conference with the PEC. One of the candidates we know prior to this, Engineer Kwabena Ejapong, has challenged the other contenders to a televised debate. How does that come to you? Necessary?
Well, but I don't know that it is necessary, but it will be useful. I actually think, though, that from my own experience, unfortunately, in our environment, debates and ideas are not as valuable as they are in other politics. You know, for example, after the 2007 NPP and NDC primaries, the Daily Graphic wrote an editorial that I had the best ideas of anybody contesting in both parties. And I got one vote in the primary. It didn't matter at all. So I don't know that debates make that much of a difference in the context of where we live.
It doesn't win elections. At least not in our part.
No, it doesn't, unfortunately.
I see. How is the race itself shaping out for you? Are you seeing a winning candidate, not in the presidential primary, but for 2028, as far as the NPP is concerned, excuse me?
I think it is too early. You know, I actually think, you know, we are in 2025. The election is 3 years away. I mean, if you think about it, all other places where elections are coming up in the United States, Senegal will have one in 2029. The races are just foggy because it is so far away, and a lot of things can happen in 3 years. So I think that we would have been wiser to wait. So from my point of view, I haven't gotten excited yet because I believe, unfortunately, and I hope I'm wrong, that whoever the MPP picks will have a lot of credibility problems emanating from the process itself, not necessarily because that person is bad or good. And those process credibility issues will hamper the person. And secondly, I also felt that given where the body politic of our democracy is, I think that this will have been a very good opportunity to move towards what I will call enfranchising the masses, which will mean that everybody who pledges allegiance to a particular party should have been allowed to vote in their primary. That will have been rejuvenating for our politics. It will have demonetized it, and it will have energized our democratic process.
Very well. And just before we let you go, I want us to look at the leadership elections as well. Even though the presidential primary will come before that one, as far as the timetable is concerned right now, we know that the former chairman Paul Ã has thrown his hat into the ring. What do you think about that?
Excellent idea. I actually think that regardless of who you would vote for, there is a redemptive quality to Paul Ã candidacy. I think that the way he was treated was not fair. So if you have a sense of justice you think that there might be some redemptive quality to his running. Of course, all these contests under those circumstances, as people say in politics, we are not there to do justice. We are there to win elections. President Hillary Mann contested, remember, in 1992 and didn't do well at all. So it is always possible that he wouldn't do well, but I think that there is an exciting and redemptive quality to his candidacy.
Dr. Arthur Kennedy, pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you too, and have a good evening.
You too. Dr. Ța Kennedy is a stalwart of the NPP. We've just been discussing issues around the primaries of the NPP, particularly on the back of the Presidential Election Committee's decision to uphold an earlier ban on proxy voting, for the presidential primary of the NPP. We'll take another break. When we come back.
Nia ekoso ewo yemai Ghana mu ene mesho se comment section na fa comment no ebrem na mejebre akenkan ede ama fefefe aha eye Ghanatube so insema ekoso ena onsa ebeka subscribe na hit notification bell no for more news updates see ade akam